Nina, I'm an addict. First, I want to say to all of you how really excited I am about being here. I'm visiting from California, and it's been like 8 months that I've been looking forward to coming here. And I want to welcome all of you. I guess you're all from around here, close by. And this is a tape announcement that I just wanted to make. This conference is being taped courtesy of Gopher State Tape Library, a nonprofit organization is done in the spirit of trying to carry the message. Tapes of all principal speakers will be ready shortly after each speaker finishes and will sell for $4 each. Thank you. You know, when I came into the program, I remember someone taking me to my first step study meeting. I didn't know what the steps were. I mean, they were talking about steps, and I thought they were talking about Steppenwolf or something. I didn't even know what steps, what are they? Then when I found out what you're going to have to do with the steps or in the steps, I swore I would never do them. I was in denial, resistance, you name it, everything there was. I didn't feel that the steps had anything to do with recovery. Today I have such a love for these steps, I cannot tell you. These steps have given me the peace, have given me the serenity, they've given me the gifts that I never had out there. You know, I used outside there for 25 years, and I didn't know what a moment's peace was. I had no idea when I started this program where the steps would take me. I had no idea how deep the steps go, and they go deep. You know, it's an inward journey that I can't tell you where it will take you, but it will take you to a place other than what it was like out there. You know, that I can promise you. We talk about the first step being powerless. The only thing I was ever powerless over was how to stop using drugs. I was not powerless over drugs. I had a lot of self-will. My self-will had me using 25 years every single day. I was not powerless over people, places, and things. And when I first heard about the step, I didn't even understand what powerlessness meant. It took me years to begin to understand what it meant for me to be powerless. And one of the things that it meant, and one of the reasons why I was so afraid of it, was it meant that I had to stop manipulating, I had to stop controlling, and that was very frightening. To think that I did not have any control over your life, over my old man's life, my children's, or someone who is at work, their bosses or people at work, whatever it may be. I mean, that was scary. And I didn't know how not to be powerless. I didn't know what it took to be powerless. I knew that my life was unmanageable. And I know today that when I take over, when I control, when I try to manipulate, my life is still unmanageable. If something is not the way it's supposed to be, I know that my will is in there. They talk about the second step. Believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity. I had to stop and think, you know, what is this power? I don't know about anybody else, but I was brought up with a vengeful God and a punishing God. And I didn't understand a power greater than myself, because I was certain that even if God, or this loving God that they told me that I had, was there, he would still need my help. I was positive about that. then I had to begin to understand what the insanity was. What is the insanity that God would restore me from? We all know the obvious one. To go out there and to use and to kill ourselves is insane. And the greatest miracle for me was that I found out that I did not have to use for one day. See, I never thought that that could happen. I had to believe that there was some power doing it because I knew it wasn't me. As I said, I had a God that was a punishing God. I was brought up to believe in a punishing God, a vengeful God. When I came in, they said, we have a loving God. And I had no idea what that was. I didn't know how to trust. Here I had to take an addict's word that there was a loving God. I started to get in touch with blind faith and what blind faith was. And in getting in touch with blind faith, because I was hurting so badly that I was willing to go to any lengths to try anything. And this is what I held on to. They said to me to have blind faith that there is a loving God. And again, it took years for me to understand this loving God. You know, working the steps for me has always been a process. It is never ending. It's almost 10 years down the line, and I know that what I have, I am going to keep doing as long as I'm alive, because it's an inward journey. It's a journey into myself, where I'm going to be able to discover everything about myself that was destructive out there, and to be able to change. Because I'll tell you something. In this program, you either change or you die. You know, when I came into the program, I was 50 years old, and there weren't that many addicts, and there still aren't that many addicts in NA that age. And they said, Sydney, you know, you really belong. I was sharing this last night with one of the women here. You really belong in another 12-step program. No one around here is your age. They work the steps there. Where you're going, a lot of losers. A few years later, I ran into this guy. And I said, hey, by the way, I still haven't found a loser here, except those that are out there. And I want you to know that the steps work here in Narcotics Anonymous. And they do. Because you see, one of the things that I had to come to terms with, because there were not that many addicts when I came in, and there certainly were not that many women, was that there's recovery in Narcotics Anonymous. And recovery is in the steps. Getting back to the third step, I have learned that my will and God's will cannot be in the same place at the same time. And took, again, many years for me to discover what my will was as opposed to God's will. You know, the question I used to ask, I used to walk around like an idiot. How do you know God's will? By learning the steps, by working the steps, by living the steps, by internalizing the steps, what begins to happen is that we begin to understand what God's will is at times and what my own will is. Sometimes you don't. I'll tell you one thing that I have learned from my mistakes. I have never learned from anything when it was going okay. But by my mistakes, I have learned. The fourth step, I swore I would never do. That's one of the ones, you know, I swore I was never going to do. How dare they? You know, these little punks telling me I'm going to have to sit down and write my last 50 years. I mean, it's going to take me 50 years to do. And rigorously honest. It's amazing how out of touch, how wasted I was from drugs, where I couldn't recognize certain feelings. Rigorously honest. I knew what honesty was. Into such denial that I absolutely could not identify what honesty was in terms of me. That's how out of touch I was with my feelings. But an inventory is the most important. I mean, all the steps are important. And by the way, each step prepares you spiritually for the next step. They must be done in order. They will not work. They will not work. I had to write down my resentments. I ended up, my first inventory I did, I wrote about everybody else's things, what they did to me. That taught me something too. It showed me where my resentments were. It also showed me what my feelings were. It helped me later on in my 8th and my 9th step. I had to write about not necessarily relationships, but I had to write about expectations, unrealistic expectations that I had, especially about men. All my life, and I had been married, have daughters, have a grandchild. I had every relationship ended up being destructive, as everything else in my life. That is the nature of this disease. I didn't even know what unrealistic expectations were. I found it very easy to do when I related it to a man and what I expected of him. I had to write down people that I had hurt so that I had a list that I could use for my 8th and my 9th step, or at least a partial list, because I wasn't up to that step yet. And what happened was that I began to see a pattern. I began to see where so many of my inadequacies had started, so many of my fears had started. This is the humidity I'm not used to, folks. And in seeing it, something happens when you see that in black and white. I had to write down about guilt. I had to write down about shame. I don't know about you, but I was brought up with shame. I had to write down things that I had never told another human being, and that frightened me to death, because that meant, see, if I just had to share it with God, I'm going into the 5th step now. If I just had to share that with God, it would have been fine. I could have lied my way through it, as I used to with everything else. Too painful? Lying. Because that's what self-deception is. Self-deception is lying to oneself. That's how I justified using for all those years, for killing myself all those years. I'd lied to myself. But to know that I had to share it with another human being was so frightening to me. But somewhere I had to begin to trust. And it was with my sponsor that first bond, that first trust began. With you people in the program. Sharing at meetings, sharing on a one-to-one, sharing with the sponsor. And I was told that I have one sponsor, I use one sponsor, I take directions for one sponsor. Because somebody knew about my disease. They knew. If I had two, I'd keep going back and forth until I'd hear what I wanted to hear. If I didn't hear it from one, I'd sure as heck hear it from another. I want to talk about the 6 and 7 steps. I'm only skimming through these steps, believe me, because I want to get to the questions and answers. We can go into it more deeply. But the 6 and 7 steps are steps that So many addicts think all you do is read it, wait for God to remove it, and that's the end of it. It doesn't work that way. 6 and 7 steps are the steps that you work on the rest of your life as we do all the other steps. I have to work on them every single day. And every step is an action step. You hear certain people say that there are certain steps that are action steps. Well, it's a different kind of action, but I truly believe that every step is an action step. And in 6 and 7 steps, the first thing I have to do is get in touch what character defects are. A very simple thing of character defects is that character defects are something more than what God intended them to be, like fear. When I came into this program, I was a mass of fear. It paralyzed me. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't be anywhere. That was, I am certain, more than what God intended fear to be. Because it paralyzed me. I couldn't function. I couldn't live. And life is a gift from God. But every day I must look at the character defect, and that means getting in touch. What are my character defects? And that's where that inventory really helps. And I have to do it differently. One of the women I sponsored would say to me, Sydney, I can't stand this guilt. I said, great. I know exactly what you can do. She said, what? I said, don't do anything that's going to make you feel guilty. That's simple. But not for us addicts. It's not that simple. I have done writing on the 6th and 7th. Another woman that I sponsored just finished writing on her 6th and 7th, and we sat and we shared about it for 4 hours. This was towards the end of it. This was on top of other writing and besides her 4th step. Going back to when she first came into the program until just recently, what have I changed about myself? What haven't I dealt with? If you don't think that doesn't make you stir a little. Every single day, did I hurt another human being today? I must always look at this. The 8th and 9th were the other 2 that I said I would never do. And it was funny because my first year of doing my 8th and the 9th, I started that in my 2nd year. Every single one of them that I swore I wouldn't do was put right in front of me with my back up against the wall to do. And trembling and filled with fear, I did them. I want you to know, and I'm not just sounding brave, believe me, because I still have feelings. I still can get any character defect at any given moment. A miracle has happened today. The fear has been removed. It's a privilege. It may sound stupid, but it is. It's a privilege to be able to make an amends to someone. You see, because what it does, it clears up the wreckage of the past and the present inside of me. That thing inside of me that eats away like a cancer is no longer there. Perhaps it has to do with the years of trust, the love that I have for another addict. That if I hurt someone, if I have done something, today it feels good to be able to go over and say, hey, I'm sorry. This is an ego-deflating program. The steps chip away and sometimes chop away at this sick ego that an addict, my addictive personality, has. And the opposite of that ego, that sick ego, is humility. And to be able to make an amends is an act of humility. It's an act of love. and a far deeper understanding than I ever have had. The 10th step, well, let me tell you, with my disease, I found out that I was a very undisciplined person. And it said every night, you look over the day, and if you've hurt someone, you promptly admitted it. If you were wrong, you promptly admitted it. And as soon as someone says to me every day, a wall comes up. Very lazy. Sloth was one of my character defects. Okay? Always said, God understands. He knows what I'm feeling. I tried that for a while. It didn't work. What I did eventually, because I was hurting, I was not doing that 10th step. And for 3 years, I would write a 10th step. I don't do it anymore. I don't write it anymore, but I do it at the end of the day. And make my peace with God at the end of the day. The 11th step is what gives me, gives me such joy, that step. Because this to me is what my search has been for these past years, and that is to understand my relationship with a loving God. I understand God's love for me. Always willing to take it. A great taker. I had to understand what it meant to give to this loving God. And I'll tell you that 10, 15 minutes of meditation a day. Meditation is simple. There's nothing that difficult about it. Somehow there seems to be a mysterious thing about it. How do you meditate, or what do you meditate? Mine is, I know many people, and there's not just one correct way, say they quiet themselves, they empty themselves. I do exactly the opposite. I have a dialogue with God every single day, every morning and every evening, whenever I need it in between. And it's truly a search for me, a search for truth, a search for whatever I talk to God about. In some strange way, a voice answers. There's nothing mysterious about it. It's usually my own voice. But you feel something working there. It is a time that I give. It's a discipline that I need for myself to give to a loving God who has given me so much. Saturday night, I'll talk a great deal more about that. That's why I didn't want to get too much into this, and yet I don't want to leave anything out. The 12th step, about service. I love service. Okay? I've been in service, and I had 10 months on the program until now being in world service, which is a privilege. I have never been without it since I've been in the program. I still clean out ashtrays. I still wash out coffee cups. I still pick up newcomers. They still kick on my couch, even though we have a lot of recovery houses now. When I came in, there was only one recovery house. And they'd kick on the couch. My old man would have the men in one room, and we have a room in the house we call the recovery room. And the chicks would be either on the couch or in the other room. I love it. But again, last night I was sharing about this, about trying to give away something that you don't have. I worked for almost 8 years in service before I got into world service. In every area up and down. And each one was as important as the other. In fact, being a GSR is one of the most important ways of serving in this fellowship. It is so important. You're the liaison between your area and your group. What could be more important than that? It's not just standing up there and announcing, we're having a meeting, we're having a dance, we're having this. You're carrying to them the message of what's happening in Narcotics Anonymous all over the world. It's a privilege. But I found so many addicts that jump into the traditions, jump into service, and then wonder why they're feeling so rotten, because somewhere down the line they'll work on the steps. That'll come to them. You know, I must tell you that how I feel about the steps is that the steps prepare you spiritually for the next step. That in turn prepares you for the traditions. And through living these traditions, living the steps, living the traditions, by internalizing them, what happens is that you begin to understand the principles of the program. Principles aren't something we just take out of the air. It's something that we learn because of experiences that we have. I can only tell you that I love these 12 steps, and I tell you, I hated them. I was afraid of them. The hate was a cover-up for the fear that I had. And other character defects like sloth. I could always find it, always looking for an easier, softer way to do something. You know, a lot of fear about having to write, a lot of fear about having to share with another human being. But today, I love them. Because as long as I'm alive, and that's how I know I'm alive, I can become a better human being. I can learn how to live without drugs. That, to me, is the miracle. Now, I know I went very quickly through the steps. There's so much more. But how about if we start opening up with questions and answers now? Anyone have a question? Yes.
I just recently got done doing a good, what I thought was a good part and fifth step after I've been in the program for a long time. I was curious to know how would I do to go on to the sixth step. That's how to become motivated.
You have a sponsor?
Yes, I do.
One of the things I wanted to say in terms of sponsor and the steps is that it is so important to work very, very closely with the sponsor. Left to our own device, we'll mess it up. You know, it is very important. Do you mean, how do you work the sixth step?
Well, in fact, I just recently got a new sponsor, and he was the one who suggested that I probably hadn't been all that honest when I was doing fourth step and treatment a few years back, and there was a number of catastrophes, at least relative to me, happening in my life, and I gained the motivation. And I believe that I did a good fourth and fifth step, kind of trying to ride on the laurels of that, I guess, hoping that somehow wisdom would come that I know what to do. Well, not even thinking really about the sixth step, but
one of the things that happens is that we have a sponsor for a number of reasons, and one of them is to learn how to take directions. I know that's very ego-deflating, and we resist anything like that, but it's one of the most important things that we can do. I did a fourth and fifth, a very small one. It wasn't even a complete one or anything like that when I was in the hospital that I went into. And they had me do it. When I came out, I was told I had to do another one. When women I sponsor come out of recovery house and they have done a fourth and fifth, they do a fourth and fifth with me. And that's for a very special reason. One of the things that we have to understand is the relationship between the addict and the sponsor. They're both addicts, but the sponsoree and the sponsor. And that must be built on trust. It's very important for the sponsor to know everything that they can about the person that they are sponsoring. Very important. But if for no other reason, if a sponsor has given directions, I really encourage an addict to follow the directions. It's To this day, when my sponsor gives me direction, I will do I won't even say one word about it. I will do exactly what is asked of me. I know that there's something behind it that I have to know. See, then the sponsor has a much better way of leading you into the 6th step. Because what you're going to start working on in the 6th step is going to come out of the inventory. That's just the beginning of it, but that's where it's going to start coming out of. I know it's very difficult when I think I did something so excellent, but the whole idea is the sharing, is the process that we go through. That's what I would suggest. And the 6th and 7th are incredible. You know, when I did my my list of character defects, I took one look at it and I said, oh my God. I remember going home and I hated these things that I saw on paper. I mean, I hated them. So I decided, right, I don't want to look at it. I put it into a drawer right near my bed. And I'm lying down to go to sleep, and I keep looking over the drawer, and I said, that's too close. And I take it out of the drawer, and I put it somewhere in another drawer. I get back into bed, and it's still too close. To this day, I don't know what I did with that list of papers. I couldn't stand looking at those character defects. Today, I have learned not to hate those character defects. I have learned that I have had to come to peace with them. I'm no longer at war with them, but I don't have to live them out today. But I had better get in touch with what they are, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to change. It was very painful for me, and I felt very ashamed knowing I had these character defects. I didn't want to admit it. I didn't like myself. This program allows you to get to a place where you start learning to love yourself. And it really, we find out, later on down the road, looking back, hindsight, we find out the wisdom of the steps, having a sponsor and taking those directions. I hope I helped you with that. Want to know anything more about it?
Well, I have a good start. I have a sponsor for some of my life, but I think it's mainly just because of where I'm at in the program that I trust. It's not that I...
It's a big start.
People weren't trustworthy. It's only that I prior to this, felt that I trusted mine. It was immaterial, it didn't apply. I trusted them, but I only trusted them with what I told them I could do.
One of the most important things that we can do is how we choose a sponsor. I don't think you necessarily have to think that that sponsor is, left to my own device at the beginning, I would have picked a sponsor that would have co-signed all my insanity. But a sponsor that works and lives the steps may be one of the most important things that you can choose in this program. The one that can give you tough love, not co-sign, but say, because I love you, I want you to know that this isn't right. This doesn't feel good. This is what I would like you to do. We have such a sick ego that it's so important for us to have that continuously knocked out from under us. So we can understand and begin to understand what humility is and start living that humility. I know for the rest of my life, every day I have to be aware of that sick ego. It'll kill me. Anyone else like to ask a question? Would anyone like to share how they, anything that, any particular way that they work a step that they have found effective? I know you work your steps. No one? God, usually there's so many questions. But that's all right. It's all right. How much time do we have? Okay. We have plenty of time. I wouldn't have rushed through them. Anyone else would like to just share? How about you two? Where are you on your steps?
I'm right in it. Right now, I finished my 5th step last November, and I've been reading a lot about, called the glide between the 5th and the 6th, where a lot of addicts sit on that high from the 5th step, and they ride that for a while. And I've talked to addicts that have ridden that high for 2 or 3 years. And for me, it hasn't been that long. I've been becoming very uncomfortable sitting on my laurels and doing nothing. And therefore, I began to start attending Step 6 meetings and talking to my sponsor about Step 6. I really like what you said about writing that down. I'm going to go home and try that out when I get home. And to me, when you write something down on paper, it just seems a lot more solid, and it slaps me right in the face a lot harder than something verbal. I think with the 6th step and working that step and even getting started to work that step, you have to realize, like you said, that it's more than just a reading of a passage of the book and, oh, gotta take all the bad things out of my life, poof, you're done. To me, I guess the 6th step is where your program really lies, as far as, do you want to change or do you want to be the same way? And like anything in this program, I don't have to do anything. But if I want to grow, or if I want to become a different person and a better person, I must work these steps. And I must do what is suggested by my sponsor. And at first, I believed the 6th step was just a wham type of thing. And the more I talk to people and the more I read the articles in the NAA and read the book, I realize that is a lot bigger process than I thought. I realize that it's just as big a process as that 4th and 5th step. And when I did my 4th, I was scared to death. Like you said, just fear gripped me. And now I sit with the knowledge of my 4th and 5th steps, and still I'm a little hesitant. The toe in the water, let's test it out and see how it goes with the 6th step. But I know it's something I have to do if I want to get better. And it's funny that we were talking about desperation the other night, that how long is it since you've been really desperate, really hungry for this program? How bad do you have to hurt today to get that desperate? And you don't have to hurt that long. And I just made a decision that I don't want to hurt anymore, even a little bit. And I'm desperate enough to work this step and do whatever I have to do and look at whatever I have to look at to get better. And it's not an easy step. You know, I found that even reading about it and stuff, that some of that garbage is still down inside me. But it's something I have to work on. I really like what you said about that, writing it down.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
I'd like to make a comment. I'm Bryce.
Yes, Bryce.
Right.
I've really been wholeheartedly seeking the 3rd step in sort of a complete, fulfilling type of way. I guess to me, that is the most important step, and it's something that I have to continue to be open about. And I guess sometimes I have a difficult time with other addicts and their conception of their higher power. Because I guess sometimes it doesn't seem consistent. with the type of loving God that I want to believe in. And lately it's been really fun, I guess, because I've had lots of experiences talking with other addicts about God and what it really means, and I could really get deep, but I won't. But for me, it's like I can't explain deep enough in my heart how very important that step is to me, and how much I want to share that with other people, and especially other addicts. Sometimes it's difficult because we all have our own conceptions. And I think probably that alone is what makes me the most uncomfortable sometimes, because I really want to encourage people to get a stronger conception of their higher power, not just one that is sufficient to be satisfactory, but one that is all powerful and no limitations, I guess. And I'm really, like I said, I really feel strong about it. And I'd like to just hear what you have to say.
I know what you mean about loving the step. I don't know if I love it more than the others. To me, they are all a part of the same thing. One of the things that I had to learn is to allow someone else the right to have to go through whatever they have to go through to get to wherever they're going. Sometimes when we care very much, when we find something very wonderful, what we want to do is we want so much to give it to those that we love and those around us, and we can't do it. And we find out truly how powerless we are. We find out that, and my faith is, that there is a loving God who's going to be working in that person's life, whether that person believes or not. One of the things that I had to learn was that all that I had to be aware of was how I felt, how I think, and how I act. See, I believe I want you to know that my understanding of God is an ever-ending process. Today, it has developed because of things that have happened to me in my recovery, that have happened to me. It is very different today than when I first came in, when I first believed just in blind faith, when I believed that there was a God out there. See, to me, God is right here in this room. I'm talking about spiritual. Everything, everyone here to me is spiritual. This loving God that I have come to understand, and for the rest of my life will come to understand at a different level as I grow, is right here. It's an entirely different God than when I first came in or what I was brought up with. I have faith that God is going to work in that person's life. I help many women that come into this program who do not believe in God, and I know there are many men that do not believe in God. And I will say to the women, do you believe in the God inside yourself? I have never met an atheist that has said no. They all say yes. They believe in the God inside themselves. It's funny. Somehow they separate the God, a loving God, from something inside themselves. For me today, I don't separate it. I know also that all that I can give someone is my experience, strength, and hope in directions of how I worked and lived these steps. That's all I have to give. I can't make anyone believe anything. I don't even want to. You know, I hear addicts identifying themselves other than being an addict. Let me tell you about the wars that I had with that. I'm not at war today. And I love other 12-step programs with a passion. They gave us this program. What a gift. I am grateful to them. But I am an addict. And I believe only an addict can help another addict. I had to sit back and say whoever will end up in Narcotics Anonymous will end up in Narcotics Anonymous. God bless anyone. Thank God for those other 12-step programs to be able to help people with their disease. Thank God we found Narcotics Anonymous. I've learned to stop fighting that, which has given me the energy and the ability to go into myself to learn about me. That's all I ever have to be concerned about, is how do I feel about this loving God? And I'm always learning about it. I find out a great deal of how selfish I am. This loving God is willing to forgive me with everything. Accept me unconditionally. I'm not as gracious as this loving God. I'm human. I do not have that perfection. No human being ever will. I don't want it. But man, I hooked into something in this program. And I hooked into that loving God that's given me a way to go. You know, what a miracle. Sick addicts like us who did nothing but destroy. And we start living a life where we don't destroy. What a miracle. We don't use. Some of us even manage to have relationships. You know, when I came into the program, I don't suggest this for anyone. I was a newcomer when I hooked up with my old man. We've been together almost 10 years, as long as I've been in the program. And I knew nothing about the program or how to work the steps, but I'll tell you, I had to learn how to work those steps. I had better work those steps. My old man is beautiful, and he's totally insane. I mean, he's a street junkie, spent half his life in San Quentin and Soledad, and I didn't come from the streets. And we come from two different places, but he knows one thing. He used to say, I never could understand how Sydney knew what I was feeling. I spent my life in prisons. I spent my life on the streets. He says, until I heard her story, then I know she hit a bottom inside the way I hit a bottom inside. And that's the bottom that we hit. Now, that's the bottom that we hit. And I was going to say something, but it just went right out of my mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is John. I'm driving. I've been working. I guess I'm at a place kind of where that 7th step, and I'm just kind of, I don't know, I'm not really sure. And I haven't really gotten a lot of, I guess, I'm just confused about the 7th step, you know, and how I go about it. I've gone to started going to professionals, you know, and stuff like that. I've gotten some help, but I still feel like, you know, I was trying to get share something a little more on the 7th step.
You know, one of the things that we have to have that I know that I'm continuously asking God to give me is more patience. Recovery is not something that happens overnight. It takes time. The 6th and 7th step take years to work on. I mean, a lifetime to work on. But I must say something about getting help. And I don't tell anyone what to do. My own experience. I had, before I came into the program, I had many years of help, outside quote, help. And none of it worked. Didn't help my using drugs, my stop using drugs. It didn't help me. I mean, when I came into this program, I was legally insane. That's what the drugs did to me. Nothing helped except the program of Narcotics Anonymous the 12 steps and the tradition. This is my experience. And I believe it. I truly believe it. That if you keep working the steps, the 7th step, well, you know, they talk about, well, you hear some addicts say, what's the difference between character defects and shortcomings? I don't believe there's a difference at all. I think someone put in that word so it wouldn't be shortcomings and shortcomings, or character defects and character defects. I mean, I can't personally see any difference. If someone else does, my old man says something that you fall short of doing. Well, to me, that's a character defect. You know, I don't see it any other way. But that's why we work very, very closely with a sponsor in terms of each day. What am I not doing today that I'm supposed to be doing? Am I living out jealousy or envy? Am I being slothful? You know, am I in pride? You know, pride is in every character. It's the only character defect that's in every other character defect. And I can assure you that whatever that character defect is, you're going to find this sick human pride right there on top of the list. You know, I want, I need, I want, I need, I want, I need, always. What do I give? What can I do for you? How can I help you? How do I get out of the sick me? Thank God for that 12th step where I can turn to an addict who needs help, a suffering addict, and get out of me. But there's so much inside of us, you're darn right we're going to have to come to terms with, and I'm going to have to look, but that takes time. Am I being selfish today? I have to ask myself all these questions. And in that 4th and 5th there, you'd find a lot of the character defects that are there. And I wasn't always willing to have them removed. I was afraid you'd take that away from me. Man, what am I going to be? I'll be nothing. I'll be empty. Or afraid what would be there. You know, what am I going to be? Goody two-shoes? You don't have to worry about that. Not with us addicts. Every day there is something to work on, but it goes much deeper than that. We've been scarred, what we went through. And sometimes just putting a Band-Aid on those scars may be the very best that we can do for that moment. But I do know one thing, if we do keep working on that character defect, see, I don't go looking for them. They will present themselves to me each day. And that's how I start working on them. I used to pay my bills by the last second. And before they were going to turn everything off, I'd make a dash down. It's funny because I just did that before I came out here. The only reason I did that is I wanted to get them done so I wouldn't come back and have to do them. So I rushed down and did it. Not only did I do that, I want to tell you what I did with them. When I was first clean, when I first came into this program, I'd get a bill. I could hear it coming in the slot, mailbox slot. Take it, unopened, stick it in the back of the drawer. Couldn't deal with it. Didn't want to deal with it. Paralyzed by fear, irrational fear. Then came the stealing from Peter to pay Paul, you know that one? And then all of a sudden, I got in touch. My God, that's dishonest. My great rationalization was, well, the telephone company has all the money in the world. They don't need my bucks. They can wait. They wouldn't mind. Well, they sure did mind. You know, that's that sick rationalization, the addict's rationalization. That's dishonest. I was actually stealing from someone if I really want to look at it. And I had to learn how to pay those bills. I had to learn how not to buy something if I didn't have enough money. So if I knew something was coming up, taxes or this or whatever it was, my daughter's birthday, no matter what. I had to learn you don't go out and buy. Because I'll tell you, I will switch addiction so fast I can't even tell you. If it isn't going to be drugs, it'll be a man. If it's not going to be a man, it'll be money. If it's not going to be money, it'll be clothes. It'll be something. I had to work on that in terms of character defects. I didn't even know I was doing it. I went around so self-righteous about who, me? Of course not. I'm not addicted to men. I'm not addicted to clothes or money or this or that or want. This program, and that's what I was saying in that 11th step, when I have this conscious contact with God in search for the truth about me. And it's slow. It doesn't come all at once. It's very slow. Thank God, because if we had all the awarenesses at once, we wouldn't be alive. I don't think we could stand it. I know I couldn't stand it. It is true, God never has put more in front of me than what I could handle. I didn't believe that. Today, I do not doubt it at all. I don't care what it is. Everything I do, every step that I work, I ask God to help me. I know how to do only one thing perfectly, and that's how to use. That's how to kill myself. With every step, I ask God to help me. How do I work the step? Help me to have the courage. Help me to have the grace. I have my babies start out with one character defect. I have one woman that is forever, bless her heart, for 3.5 years, she's still into manipulation and control. I just put her into a 10-year depression because I had her write down for 1 month every single day. Every time during the day, she tries to manipulate or control her old man. And she was ready to tear her hair out in 3 days. She couldn't even believe it. But that's the kind of work that we can do when we really start getting into destructive. Just look on a 30-day level, 1 day at a time. Talk about being powerless. Just think how many times during the day you have power over someone or something. I do. I have to look at it. I have to try to change it. And ask God to help you with it. Have the patience. And in time, because change is a process, it is not something that's abrupt. It is not something that happens and I've got it. The steps are a process of an unfolding. The most wonderful adventure you're going to find. As scary as it seems at the beginning, and I know it does at the beginning. One day it won't be that way. Is there anything else I could help you with on that? Would you like to share with us? Mm-hmm.
My name's Art. Will you do this? For the steps, I was in a program for about 6 months.
You want to step up here a little bit by the chair?
I can speak loud.
Thank you.
I was in the program for about 6 months, and I went into a step group. And I've learned a lot just from this talk here, especially on step 6 and 7, because I was kind of rushed through it. My sponsor, I did my step 5 with him, and then my sponsor said immediately go home and do 6 and 7. I have to go back over it. And it showed, because 6 and 7 didn't mean that much to me, really. But this step group really did it for me. And I suggest anybody that has a chance to go to a step group to do it. And have a little sobriety before you go through step group. Because that way you're able to know how to apply things to your lives. After you get over that real high when you first come into the program, after you get over that and things start getting down to the normal drab, everyday living, then go to the step group. And I gained a lot more out of it. When I first came into the program, they were starting a step group, and I only had 2 months. And I was on this high that nobody could knock me off, and I wanted to go for it. But I was under the eligibility for the sobriety, and I was really glad that I had waited, because it did a lot for me. And then to it, as you said, one step leads to another, prepares you for the missions and service work, and that's exactly what happened to myself. Mind you, in this discussion, I learned I have to go back over and take a look at a few of them.
Thank you for sharing. You know, all the steps, it's not only the 6th or 7th, I love them all. And every single one of them, if you take the steps and truly go into it, goes deeper and deeper and deeper. But it is only, again, that process I was talking about, as you work them, as you have the experiences and apply them to your life every single day, do you become aware of what you have to work on for that particular day. Thank you for sharing. Would anyone else like to share? How about the gentleman next to you on the other side?
My name is Bernie. I got it.
Hi, Bernie.
I learned a lot from you also this morning. I have a problem with humility sometimes. I try to control other people, especially my wife and my children. And I wrote down a few things here, not to, to learn how to be more acceptable and be a better person towards them. I'm really enjoying it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we all have a problem with humility. That ego, as I said, that human ego, that human pride will kill us. And so many times, especially the addict who is so destructive, or I who was so destructive, would turn immediately to the person that I loved most. It was the easiest person to hurt. And today I don't have to do that. Someone I sponsored just went back east to visit a friend who was dying of cancer. And she was telling me about this woman who she loves and knows many years. And this woman they don't know if she'll die tomorrow, or I don't know if she died yesterday, or if it'll be a few weeks down the line. And it's a horrible cancer. It just ravages the body, and the only thing it hasn't ravaged is her human spirit. When this friend of mine was leaving, this woman's old man walked to the door, and my friend said to him, "My God, but you've changed. You really have changed." And she got, she said, "And look what it took to make you change. I mean, you couldn't do this before." Apparently he was running around doing a lot of things. And he was talking, he said, "I try so hard to take care of her, to do everything I can to see that she's all right today." And he said it so beautifully. And I turned to this friend of mine and I said, that's what we must remember, not to wait until someone dies to want to do that. And when I speak tomorrow night, you'll understand more about that. But that truly is what I am beginning to understand so much better, what my role as a human being, as an addict recovering is. And that role for me is, what can I do for you today? What can I do for a loved one? You're all my loved ones. You're my brothers. You're the only people who understand how I feel. Isn't that a miracle? I can't be that way all the time because I am human. I have faults. I have character defects. But practice is what we as addicts have to do continuously. It's a continuous act of practicing. Everything is. You have a great virtuoso who's going to perform. He just does not get up and perform. He's practiced all of his life. A great football hero gets up there to perform for that day. You know he was out on that field practicing. We as addicts have to practice the steps. Practice being satisfied where we are. Practice learning to be more loving, to be more giving. I have gotten very much in touch with truly trying to love this day. I don't care if I didn't sleep last night. I don't care. It's like I missed my connection. I told everyone last night at the meeting the other kind of connection, the plane connection yesterday. All that doesn't matter. You know, I walked in, I got to the airport, and there were all these addicts there. Man, I was home. And I want you to know that for 50 years, you never saw anyone suffer the way I suffered. I was the perfect victim. And if it weren't for the steps, if it weren't for the changes, not that I did, that this loving God in the process of these steps of what they do, well, I don't even know if I'd be still suffering. I think I'd be using. I don't know. But I was great at suffering. A perfect victim. Blame everyone and everything. I have to stop learning to blame. I had to learn how to stop blaming my old man. And he's such good material. I had to learn how to stop blaming my kids. And they are so beautiful. But that was my thing. You know, who else do you blame? And I had to learn. So all these things that we do here is a learning process. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? How about you there? At the end. Mm-hmm.
I think I'll
All right. Anyone else want to share their experience? Strength and hope. Okay, you know, a lot of things that I said today, I wanted to share some of it tomorrow night when I share with you. And if I have to, I will. I don't mind repeating certain things. But wherever you go, whatever happens to you, I want you to know that it is impossible to work the steps and to use at the same time. Impossible. It completely contradicts everything. You hear people who go out talking about, well, I don't know what happened. I was working the steps. No way. How can you have a loving God in your life doing His will, who wants us to live, who's given us a gift of life, and still go out and use? But that's the insanity. That's the addict's thinking. And I can promise you that these steps will take you on an adventure that is so magnificent. My God, we're human beings. We're very special people. We are very special to this loving God. We are one of His children. We've been given an incredible gift. I see the miracles of my old man, this man who never had anything, Never thought he would have anything. He tried 14 times to make this program. After 20 years, he finally made it, thank God. And he's going on 12 years. I see these miracles happen to a little girl that walks in who is shaking, who shouldn't even be alive, like all of us. And it's all in the steps. And it's in the steps of Narcotics Anonymous. Because part of the healing is God working through one addict to help another addict. And I want to thank you so much. I just enjoyed this. It was so tremendous for me. And thank you for sharing your experience, strength, and hope with me. God bless you.